Welcome to the Mission Advancement Podcast, where we talk about the importance of human connection, generosity, and leadership so that mission-minded leaders will be inspired to learn and grow. Well, today we have Dominique Glanville with Heights Strategic Marketing. Dominique is a colleague and has become a friend in recent years in doing some work together, and excited to have this conversation with you today. And welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Good,
It's great to be here.
You know, you and I have had a long history of working together, and actually you were a big inspiration for this podcast happening. So thank you for that. And I'm so excited to have you kind of breathe into this topic of leadership and kind of see that everything come to fruition. Yeah. So let's start by just giving the audience a little bit of a background on who you are, your professional journey, and you are an entrepreneur today. So talk a little bit about just kind of how you grew up in the professional world and what led you to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so wonderful to be here. I really started my professional journey. I have a bachelor's in communication and a master's in conflict resolution. And part of that was really the curiosity around people, the decisions that they make, how they form rapport, how we repair when things break down. And that originally led me into a more mission-driven space. I was in the nonprofit space, really working at the intersection of post-conflict societies and how nonprofits were interacting in places like Northern Ireland and South Africa and different places like that. The recession of 2009 was kind of an interesting time to be early in my career. And so I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time, which is where I met my awesome husband. And we both met at this company that was training people in executive style coaching. And we were doing that in a higher ed context. So we were kind of consulting in higher ed, doing executive coaching with populations of students, which was really interesting, and testing them against a control. So things like effectiveness and prioritization and things like that. So that really taught me, between communication and conflict resolution, and then that executive coaching training taught me a lot about listening and really assessing, trying to drill down to what's really important, driving value in a conversation, helping people to move forward. And then when we moved to Dallas, I had some nonprofit work, fundraising work, advancement work that I was doing, and then ended up in an amazing consulting company that really taught me how to think in a consulting space and really data segmentation, looking at different populations of donors and how to upgrade those donors or reactivate them. And so I feel like I learned a lot from the outside of the nonprofit space, how to really impact the nonprofit space in the development department. And then I was having my kids during that stage and traveling a lot, and so wanted a little bit more balance rather than the consulting world. And so I ended up going in-house in an organization called the Halftime Institute, which was such a blessing, Bob Buford's organization. And so I did kind of a combination of marketing and fundraising for them. Got to participate in like a legacy campaign, which was really amazing. And then from there, I had an awesome mentor who said to me, "I think you're meant to be an entrepreneur." And at the time, I had no vantage point for that. I was like, what are you talking about? Do you mean like open an Etsy shop? And he was like, I had no imagination for what that could look like. And the funny thing is that my husband, actually, his MBA is in entrepreneurship. So in our family story, we always imagined that I would have the stable job and kind of support him in being an entrepreneur. Well, God had different plans for that. So this mentor of mine said to me, no, what you're doing here, the insights that you're bringing to this organization, how it can grow, how we need to think about marketing and growth, you can be doing that for organizations on your own. You could start your own company and consult. And I was like, oh, wow, I guess that's what I was doing in the past, just working for someone else. Maybe I could do that. And at the time I didn't have the confidence really. So I just really, in an act of faith, was sort of praying. And several of my contacts from the Halftime Institute who had launched into their own entrepreneurial journeys or nonprofits said, well, we'd love to be your first client. And the organization was really supportive. So I ended up promoting my direct report into my spot, which was so great to just see her grow and be in that news station. And then I wrote myself into the budget as a contractor. And so that was just an amazing launch pad for that. And within a year, I was sitting as a fractional CMO with a really large company, flying to Charlotte and doing that. And I was like, oh, I guess this is meant to be. And so since then, it's been a real journey of, my company is Heights Strategic Marketing. And I think I went in thinking I'll help companies with their marketing. But really the focus has been really more on the strategic part of it. And marketing is sort of the lane we play in, but really this idea of how do we take the ways organizations want to grow and think about the strategy that aligns marketing and sales to help them to do that, which, is a lot of that, the same mindset that I was going in with donor segmentation or, the way that we think about that. So that's how I got here, kind of the accidental entrepreneur, if you will.
Like most, right? Like most. Well, you and I have worked together, and so my knowledge of you as a person, as a leader, as a communicator is unique in understanding. And one of the things I know about you, one of your gifts is your incredible way with words. You have just incredible communication ability, I would say, in today's, professional world. I feel like that's a skill that is not as common.
Thank you.
So as you and I, even ideated this podcast, you were such a great source of taking ideas and putting them into words. Like that's obviously a huge gift that you bring to other organizations. But thinking about your own journey, I know you've begun to kind of articulate some of your values in leadership. And as our podcast really focuses on generosity in a number of ways, I want you to speak a little bit about how generosity has shown up in your journey as a leader. You've been a solopreneur. You've also led a team. You've kind of played both roles, but talk a little bit about the generosity element of your journey and kind of what that looks like in a leadership role.
Yeah, and I just want to say I just really appreciate the emphasis on generosity as a worthwhile quality for leaders, and just thinking about generosity in multiple forms. I think it's a really valuable conversation. And as I thought about and prayed about this, being on this podcast with you, it really brought up for me kind of a little bit of who I am and how I approach the relationships that I have both with my clients and my team. And I'm someone who doesn't really do anything halfway. So if I'm going to bring someone onto the team, I'm going to pour into them. In our job description, when we send a job description to someone new, we say, we want this to be, no matter how long you're with us, we want this to be the best place that you will have ever worked in your career. And I really mean that. And so then that puts an onus on me as a leader to how do I make this the best experience for our team, and within business sense, right? It's not that we can pay them whatever they want or that we can yield to whatever, all the things that they need, but how do we create an environment where people can truly thrive and where they believe that this organization is really, really behind me and I'm really seen in this place. And so I delve in, head first to really pour into my team, the same with my clients, and just really caring in the details about what's important to them and what's going to really drive growth in their business. But it's been an interesting journey, Jennifer, because there's a dark side to that as well, which is that sometimes we can get so attached to outcomes or to once we've poured into people, paid for certifications for our team or things like that, and then they leave, or we've really invested in clients and then the season is over. How do we then respond as leaders? And so how do we be generous in the season that we're pouring into our team and our clients, or in the case of many organizations, to our donors, but have a sort of catch and release philosophy. I was in a conversation with my business coach recently where I was kind of lamenting having poured into some people, and that there's a history at Heights of pouring into a number of team members and then they leave. And she just flipped the switch on me and said, what if part of the legacy and the impact of your organization is all the people that you've impacted for a season that are now out doing other things, and that season at Heights has been incremental in preparing them for the impact that they're making. And it just really helped me to zoom back out, and it would not make things about me or my ego or my kingdom or what I'm building, but to really think about being generous with what I know and what I can do for people, and to apply that to our clients as well, that we pour in for a season, and then we have a catch and release type of mentality with that.
Yeah, I love that phrase, catch and release, because it's memorable, right? It sticks, true marketer that you are. And I, like you, I think, especially as an entrepreneur, I feel this way, that you take losses very personally.
Yes.
And it's not personal most of the time, but it's your team, it's your company, and this could even apply to somebody who's not an entrepreneur, but you care deeply about the people that are integrated into your organization, and you really, truly want them to succeed and thrive. And there do come seasons where it's not a fit, and that's not necessarily because the organization failed. Maybe the organization succeeded, and it's the season for them, to move into something that's better.
That's right.
Yeah. So I love you've kind of put, again, language around a thought that I think a lot of leaders struggle with, and how do we celebrate, sometimes the release, instead of feeling like, how have we failed?
Well, and I think that's the challenge, is like, how do we walk out the tension of caring deeply for our team, for our clients, about the business, while also remaining open-handed to know that we're not at the center, we're not in control. And so I think that's been my journey that I'm learning and trying to reframe for myself, is the ability to really care deeply and dive in, but not be attached to long-term, keeping things around longer than they need to be. How do I remain engaged and open-handed?
Yeah. Say more about the open-handed. That's a phrase I've heard you use, but maybe not clear to everybody what you mean by that. So talk more about that style.
I think that you can be open-handed with relationships while also having a desire to know what the outcome could be, or to know where things evolve. But I think that having a little bit of a detachment from other people's response or how things hit them is a part of having healthy boundaries as a leader and not being enmeshed. I mean, we probably deal with this a lot in our families of origin or our marriages or things like that. But how do we both care deeply and not be people that are affected by things, but not let that cripple us? I was doing a study recently on Joseph in the Bible, and one of the things that really struck me about his story is that in the story, Joseph is betrayed by his brothers, and then at the end of the story, he encounters his brothers, and he's now in a place of power, and he has the opportunity to save them from famine. But he's not letting them know who his true identity is for a while. And if you read the story, he engages with them in a very direct and kind of strong-willed type of a way, but then he retreats, goes into a private place, takes a moment, and weeps, and then regains himself and comes back out and engages with the story. And at that point, he has a real sense of humility, that it's not him that's doing the work, but it's God. So he's already been doing this work of like humbling himself and realizing that he's not in control. But he also is deeply emotional about it. He has to take a minute and he cries. And that has really impacted me, because I think sometimes as a leader, we think if we let people really affect us, then we might appear weak, or if we show our emotional side. And I think as a woman and a leader, I've had my whole journey with, what parts of me and my life and my motherhood and my leadership are safe to share, and what parts are maybe better to be guarded. But I think in general, I really do believe in vulnerability and authenticity, but also being professional.
Right.
And seeing that example of Joseph, knowing that he's doing really hard things and engaging in this conflict and in this repair, but he's doing so and still knowing that he needs to take a minute, go in a room, have a good cry, compose himself, and then come back and do the work that he needs to do. That's really inspiring to me. I want to be that leader that knows when to take a minute, go into a room, gather myself, recognize my emotions, but not be the person that suppresses those emotions or whatnot. And so I think that's what I think about when I think about open-handed. It's like being self-aware enough to know your own emotional state and have emotional recognition, but not put that on someone else.
Yeah.
Not put such an attachment to the outcomes that then we're so wrapped up and in control of that.
Yeah. So you said something interesting about retreat, and I know this is really hard for leaders in a culture of busy and a culture that rewards activity and productivity or, however that might look in an organization. So how have you succeeded in that? How have you struggled in that? Like, what would be your recommendation to young leaders, or aspiring leaders around taking the time to not just compose yourself and have a good cry necessarily, but the time to retreat, to reflect. As an entrepreneur, something I learned early on that is still very hard to this day is you have to work on the business instead of just in the business. And that's a very difficult distinction to make when you are selling business or working with clients yourself, and yet you're trying to build something that's larger than just your own work. So talk about how you get space, how that's been really beneficial for you, and even just like the honest struggle of making it happen.
Yeah. One of the things that was really inspiring to me when I first started Heights was the book, The E-Myth, where he talks about there are three main functions when you start a business. It's the entrepreneur, the operator, and the practitioner. So if you think about the best way to describe this is like, think about a graphic designer starting a business, right? They are a practitioner. They could go work for someone else, but when they start their own business, they are playing all three of those roles. And then as you grow, you can't keep all three of those roles, right? And so I've learned about myself that I'm the entrepreneur and the practitioner. Those are the two roles that I enjoy playing. So I have long delegated the operational role. But that does not mean that I don't have to work on the business and work on the operations. So I think in the first few years of the business, it was like what you were saying. How do I work in the business with the clients, with the things that we're actually paid to do? And then how do I reserve time to work on the business? But as I progress in my own leadership journey, as Heights is growing and we have more complexity, and I'm also leading I'm leading a community of peers who are also trying to do a lot of the things that Heights is doing. So I have a mentorship role as well. And I've realized that I also need to retreat to work on myself. And so that's been a real challenge in this season for me, is that I have set, I'm calling it tithing a day a month right now, to just have quiet, where I just sit, I journal, I reduce all the stimulus, and I sort all the things inside that just need to come out, because the cost of not sorting myself out and doing some of that processing with people, with my husband, with my team, with the people that I mentor, that's not their job. And I can lead from a place of deep soul rest and conviction and mission and generosity if I have first done the work of figuring out what is going on inside me, the things that are the patterns that I'm seeing, the things that maybe made me pause, made me angry, made me sad. And so that's been a real challenge. So I did that. Last week was the first week my kids were out of school. It was not a great week to take time outside of the business. Clients needed a lot of things, but I made a commitment to myself that I was going to take at least a half day and do that week. And it was such an enriching time to spend just in quiet. Sometimes that's in prayer, sometimes that's in journaling. But I highly recommend that. And I had a couple over for dinner on Sunday at our house. They were in a significant leadership position. And I asked them, you're living in a really high stakes leadership position. Are you ever taking a day away just to be quiet and listen? And they were like, we really need that, we have vacation, but this is not vacation, and it's not working on operations. It is quietness of turning down the volume on all the inputs that we get as leaders to prioritize our own emotional, spiritual, soul level well-being. And I think that it is the hardest thing we will ever do. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of boundaries, but there is nothing better for us.
Yeah. And to be clear, I think you're saying this is something you do on a work day.
On a work day.
This is not
Wednesday.
a Saturday.
It was a Wednesday.
This is not a holiday. This is like, hey, Thursday from 8 to 2 or whatever hours may be, instead of diving in to my email and my to-dos and my whatever, this is how I'm going to spend my professional time.
Yep.
Right.
It is. It's intentionally on a work day. And that's why I call it a tithe, because if it were on a weekend or in the evening, or I get up really early, maybe I spend 4 to 7 a.m. or something like that, that is time that I can carve out that doesn't, it costs me sleep, but spending the actual work day on quietness is really hard. It's really hard. But I have found I get more done. Like I have greater vision and greater wisdom on where things are coming from or connections I need to make, potential projects I need to be thinking about. It's a lot of like loose ends that I'll have random ideas or things that I haven't quite sorted through. And then I just have space to go, okay, I think I need to move forward on this, but I feel a little stuck. And I can sort through that in that space. And sometimes it's conflict. Sometimes it's just noticing how I'm showing up as a leader, patterns that I want to just get more self-aware around. So.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, that's a discipline that I certainly am not successful at, but almost every kind of operating system or business coach or, person I've had the opportunity to learn from has some version of that they recommend, but I love the idea of a tithe or a Sabbath, however somebody might want to frame that. But the idea that it is carved out on a work day and email is turned off, phone is turned off, all those distractions that just naturally kind of pull our attention to whatever the most urgent need is at that time is an incredible discipline that does bring value. So that's great. So just kind of as we begin to wrap our conversation, just thinking about your journey as a leader and in the spirit of generosity, anything you would say has really required a lot of courage from you in the last, season, could be a year, could be since you've become an entrepreneur, but how have you been challenged and been courageous as a leader in recent years?
Yeah, I think that taking the time away has been one of the biggest things, having that quiet time, because I am someone, just for the listeners' context, I have 3 children. I have all the apps to manage all the children. I have, I'm married. We have a very full life outside of work. I have a lot of clients. I have staff. So there's a lot of noise. There's a lot going on. And so I think the courage to say, the tyranny of the urgent is not the most important. I think that, and I'm not defined by my achievements at work or by my responsiveness or by my productivity. I really feel like that's the hard work of a leader. I think the other thing too is I've been at a crossroads lately where I could kind of dial it back a little bit and choose a comfortable road. We have amazing clients that I'm at a stage where I have offboarded all of the tough clients that are really not fun to work with. And our clients that we work with are just lovely and delightful, and we can really impact them. And so I could just kind of stay there, but I've really felt like producing some thought leadership, really sharing the patterns that I'm seeing, trying to make a bigger impact is an invitation for me in this season. And so trying to do that really well while also being radically present for my family and my community and our existing clients has been a real tension that I've been walking out. And I think just having the courage to believe that it's possible to have more growth without having more crazy or more chaos. And then it has made me, that's really where the impetus to get quiet has been, is that I really do not want growth for the sake of growth or ego or building some sort of, I think as I'm in midlife and I've gone to more funerals and life has just gotten really real, I've realized what really matters. And it's a lot of times it's the relationships, the long-term relationships and family that we pour into. No one will remember how many podcast episodes were produced or how much money we brought in this year or that sort of thing. And so I'm just trying to remember those kind of long-term legacy, eternal things, and in tandem with how can we make a greater impact and what's the invitation out in front of me, and not being afraid to take risks and to grow and to take on new skills and to invest in different ways. And so that's been the courageous journey that I've been on.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, you, as I said in the beginning, you are a gifted communicator, a stellar marketer and strategist. I've had the pleasure of working with you in our business and seeing the work you've done with others. So how can somebody find you if they want to know more about Heights and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn at Dominique Glanville. That's probably the best way to reach me. Our website is heightsstrategic.com. And I also have a lot of thought leadership that I publish at masteringstrategicadvisory.com as well. LinkedIn. Let's be LinkedIn friends.
Yeah.
I would love that.
You are fun on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You've tried to get me to up my LinkedIn game. I'm still working on it, but you are the master. Well, thank you for being here, Dominique. It's a joy. It's a pleasure. And all the best to you and your leadership journey.
Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening to the Mission Advancement Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you'll be notified of future episodes. You can also find out more info at missionadvancement.com or on social channels. Thanks again for listening.